Now, if I were to ask you who is the most popular poet in America today, I think many would be surprised to find that it is actually Rumi, the Muslim Sufi saint. Sufism has become very popular in the West, and the primary means by which people have been introduced to Sufi teachings is through the books of poetry and other literature containing powerful metaphors and allegories found in the writings of saintly figures of the past, Sufi figures of the past. English translations of these beautiful works have sold in the millions, and they have become a part of popular culture and provided countless number of people a renewed sense of spirituality in an otherwise materialistic life. The Sufi teachings are appreciated as being universal in its outlook, applicable to all people, extending beyond the confines of which organized religion is often viewed. And because the focus in Sufi teachings is on the purification of the soul, of the individual, Sufism is received by many as being inclusive as opposed to exclusive. And it is recognized as the spiritual essence inherent in all religions, which is developing a connection with the Creator and engaging in a process of development of the soul. Now, our next presenter on the essence of Sufism, unfortunately, was not able to be with us here today. It was to be Sayyid Ambar Chisti of Ajmer, India. Brother Ambar was involved in an accident, not the story I told earlier, the day prior to having to fly here for this conference. So he was, he sustained some injuries, so please remember him in your prayers. Now, for those who are not familiar, Sayyid Ambar Chisti is the 17th generation descendant of the world-renowned Sufi Muslim saint Hazrat Muinuddin Chisti, whose tomb in Ajmer, India has become a shrine for millions of people from various faith traditions to visit every year. And although Ambar Chisti was not able to travel to be with us here today, he was kind enough to send us his notes as a prepared talk. And we are very fortunate to have with us today one of our dear members, who many believe is, a local member, but who travels to be here at our symposium every year from Australia. He is a senior prosecutor in Australia, and we are very fortunate to have him here with us again this year. So we had asked him to read out the message from Sayyid Ambar Chisti. Please welcome Mr. Sadar-u-Dean Sahukhan to the podium.
The essence of Sufism. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Sayyid Ambar Chisti, 17th generation descendant of the great Sufi saint Hazrat Khwaja Muinuddin Chisti of Ajmer, India, where Sufism was established in Asia through the message love for all, hatred for none. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who has given their precious time to listen to me today. And I would like to thank the Lahore Ahmadiyya Islamic Society for giving me this opportunity to speak and share my views with you all. Let me start with a quote. The path of Sufism is the elimination of any intermediaries between the individual and God. The goal is to act as an extension of God, not be a barrier. What do we mean by being a Sufi? What do we understand by the Sufi's quest and pursuit? What is the status of Sufi principles in the Islamic law, that is Sharia? To answer these questions or queries, A detailed discussion is required with meticulous attention. One should know, though, that attaining the norms and ethics mentioned in the Quran about being an ideal Muslim and a person of perfect faith is the goal of Sufism. The lessons of Sufism maintain these Islamic principles. For instance, the following nations are essential parts of the Sufi way. The Arabic terms are kashiyat and inabat, which means reverence and contemplation. Taslim and raza, submission to God and acceptance of the will of God. Tawakkul and taqwa, trust in God and abstinence. Sabr and sukr, which is patience and thanksgiving. Ibadat and mujahida, worship and struggle. Ikhlas and uliyat, purity of heart and spirituality. A true Sufi is someone who has reached the station of Ain al-Yaqeen, that is, the witnessing of certainty, which usually comes after many years of devotion. There are many people who say they are Sufis or resemble Sufis, but unfortunately neglect actively trying to progress spiritually. To be a true Sufi, there are 10 traits that must be followed, and these traits are universal to the various spiritual Sufi paths. Firstly, knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. This forms the very foundation of Sufism. This also means that the Sufis strive to follow the Sunnah, that is the example of Prophet Muhammad, with utmost excellence. In fact, the isnad, which is the chain of transmission, of all the major works of Quran, Hadith, Tafsir, Fiqh, which is jurisprudence, were passed down through the people of the Sufi tradition. Therefore, everyone today who is qualified to teach any of these sciences has Sufis in the chain of transmission. Secondly, concern with perfecting one's heart for the sake of God. Since God looks towards our heart, not our outward forms, Sufis prioritize working on purification of the hearts to attain Ihsan. Sufism is not about singing, clapping, or wearing specific clothing. Rather, it is about removing everything besides God from one's heart. Then comes sincerity. Sufis should be extremely meticulous in analyzing their actions, making sure that their ways are solely for the sake of God and not their egos, and therefore they should shy away from self-praise and recognition. Sincerity, again, is another caption. This entails doing everything possible to do a deed for the sake of God alone, with no pride or ostentation. This also means being humble enough to accept advice from everyone and not to mind if others turn away. Then comes humility. There are countless verses of the Quran, Hadith, and stories which emphasize the importance of humility. Sufis do not raise themselves above others or believe that they are better than anyone else, preferring instead to carry themselves with humility. Then, recognizing the people of honor and eliminating envy. By showing honor to people who deserve it, they strive to give everyone their rights and not have envy towards anyone. Remembering God abundantly. Sufis strive to make dhikr, that is remembrance of God with a pure heart, a central feature in their daily lives. Civility. Sufis strive for excellence by avoiding unnecessary arguments. If an issue arises, they clarify it in the best manner without being uncivil. Responding to evil with goodness and having concern for others. A Sufi has utmost concern for others and does his or best to strive for their well-being. They forgive those who wrong them and respond to any evil they face with goodness. Love of God, this is finally, in their daily life, Sufis consider God most important than everything and strive to attain His love. A novice on the path of Sufism struggles to embrace these highly orderly ways of life. Usually, a Sufi sheikh helps disciples in this process. They guide them in ways to purify their heart. After that, they motivate them towards the spiritual food for their souls and make them qualified for the spiritual journey. Then there emerges a person with a pure heart and sublime character who is obedient and deserves to be called a perfect human being. He is a source of happiness, peace, love, spiritual comfort, and success for him or herself, as well as for others in the society. These are the Sufis. May God bless all of us with the company of such pious people and make our souls enlightened and motivate us on the righteous path as the fruit of their spiritual intimacy with God. With regard to the word Sufi, according to Sheikh Usman Hujbiri, the author of Kashf al-Mahbub, and Sheikh Abdul Rahman Chisti, the word Sufi comes from the word Safa, meaning purity. The people of this group were called Sufis because of their pure behavior and spotless character, both in private and in public, due to a lifestyle of purification of their heart and enlightening the inner state. The genesis of Safa, which is purity, is to root everything out from the heart that is not of God and fill the heart with God's glory and love. And a branch of this lies in detaching oneself from this materialistic world. A Sufi desires nothing except the love of God, both in this life and the life hereafter. Khwaja Abdul Hashim Kufi was called by the name Sufi first of all. He used to teach in the state of Sham, which is modern Syria, but belonged to Kufa, which is a province near modern Iraq. And that is why he was called Kufi. He was a contemporary of Hazrat Sufyan Sauri. He was a great Sufi sheikh of his time. Hazrat Sufyan Sauri says, quote, "I did not know what it means to be a Sufi until I saw Hashim Sufi," and he went on to explain. Even before him, there were many people who were on the same path and popular among the people because of their purity of behavior and worshipping God with pure intention. But they were not addressed as Sufi. For the very first time, the society called Abdul Hashim by the term Sufi. It is said that the first Kanaka, and that is a place of Sufi gathering, was built in Ramla by a wealthy Christian businessman. The wealthy Christian man went for hunting in the forest. He saw that two elderly Muslims met each other on the way. First, they embraced each other. Then they sat down on the ground and shared whatever food they each had. And after eating, they greeted each other and separated. The wealthy Christian man was impressed to see their love and respect for each other. He met one of them and asked him, "Who was the other fellow with whom you ate food?" The man answered, "I don't know his name. And I'm not sure where he is from." The Christian man asked, "When you don't know him, how could you express such sincere love and respect for him?" The man replied, "We are the companions on the path of righteousness. And this is the force behind our love for each other." The wealthy Christian then asked, "Do you have any place where you all gather and meet?" The man replied, "No." The wealthy Christian then said, "I will build a house where you all may gather and meet one another." Thus the first Kanaka was constructed in Ramla, where people of the Sufi path worship God, which was built by a Christian businessman. The real objective of being a Sufi is to fill the heart with the love of God by discarding worldly pleasures and keeping the sensual desires away from the heart. They try to root out vices like greed, jealousy, keeping grudges against anyone, and engage themselves in the service of humanity without discrimination, just for the sake of the will of God. They keep above all rightful conduct with the people, irrespective of the religious and sectarian differences. At Sufi Kanaka, they serve food to the visitors with love and pleasant hospitality. All of these characteristics they apply in their life are based on the lessons of the Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Sufis try to imitate the models of conduct set by Prophet Muhammad in implementing the divine guidance. Good conduct and purity of heart is the very essence of Sufism, and this is the reason why people love them and pay reverence to them. May God bless us to have a company of such pious people and increase our heart to follow the path of righteousness due to them. As the years passed in Prophet Muhammad's life, he, meaning Prophet Muhammad, began meditating for long periods in the cave on Mount Hira outside Makkah. It was there during a retreat in the month of Ramadan in the year 610, when he was about 40 years old, that he received his first revelation in the form of a visit by Archangel Gabriel. And the revelation he received was the word Ikra, which means read. This is the importance of knowledge, reading, and writing in Islam. It was the first command that the Holy Prophet received. Hence, knowledge is the most honored of all things. It holds the highest degree and is most valuable. It is through knowledge that one can become close to the divine. As I mentioned, the Holy Prophet Muhammad is looked upon as the source of knowledge on how to achieve this closeness to God. Prophet Muhammad was called Nur, which means light, because his example can bring one out of darkness and into light. He was called Aql, which means intellect, because his teachings resonated with one's sense of logic and rationality. Prophet Muhammad was called a pen because through him knowledge was transmitted to the people. This is the status of Prophet Muhammad in Sufism. In the Sufi literature, the example of a dialogue between a guide and a disciple is used to illustrate how one should submit entirely to God. For example, the guide, "What is your name?" The disciple, "Whatever name you give me shall be my name." The guide, "What do you want to eat?" The disciple, "Whatever food you give me." The guide, "What dress do you wish to wear?" The disciple, "Whatever clothes you give." The guide, What work will you do?" The disciple, "Whatever work you ask of me." The guide, What do you want after all, the disciple? A disciple has no desire. The desires of the guide are the desires of the disciple. This is an example of how one's heart should only seek the pleasure of God. In the end, Sufism is considered to be the spiritual essence of every religion. As Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi wrote, and I quote, "If a person is sincere in his religion, then he can understand the truth in the heart of a person from another religion." I would like to thank everyone for listening to me. I would also like to invite anyone to come visit the holy shrine of Khwaja Muhyiddin Chisti in Ajmer in India, where people from all religions gather and benefit spiritually, and a sense of humanity is still alive. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadar-u-Dean.